Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's, good afternoon, actually. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. My name is Vanessa. I am an ITS communications specialist. And today we have Dr. Peter Oxley and Dr. Michele Fuortes, who have been instrumental in bringing our new LabArchives service to Weill Cornell. This is our new electronic lab notebook service. So before we begin, I just want to bring up a couple of things. We are recording today's session. So after the session is over later today, you'll get an email with some helpful links about how to get started in LabArchives, as well as the video link. So if you want to review it later, you can, or even share it with some of your colleagues who may not have been able to attend. That would be great. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to hit the chat bubble at the bottom of your Zoom window and just start typing questions in the chat. We'll be taking all the questions we can at various points during the presentation. We also will have some interactivity during today's session. You may have to raise your hand in Zoom. If you've never done that before, there is a button at the bottom of your Zoom window that says reactions. It has a little smiley face. And there is an option to raise your hand in Zoom. So that'll give us a little indication that you are participating in the activity we have planned for later in the session. But without further ado, thank you to Dr. Oxley and Dr. Fuortes for joining us. Dr. Oxley, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you for everyone who is attending this afternoon. It's very exciting to be able to talk to you about LabArchives today. There's been a lot of interest in electronic lab notebooks, not just recently, but for the whole 5 years that I've been at Weill Cornell, and no doubt even earlier. So there's lots of people who realize the value that electronic lab notebooks can bring to their research, and the value and importance they are for their labs. And so this is a new service that has been much anticipated by quite a few in the community here. And so it's very exciting to be at the point where it is now officially launched. And today I'm going to just quickly go through some of the reasons why notebooks are important and why we want to be looking at how we can integrate them into our research activities here at Weill Cornell, and a few of the Weill Cornell specific features that we have set up with LabArchives specifically, and a couple of basic use functions to get you started with using the lab notebooks. And as Vanessa mentioned at the end, for those who are willing and keen, since we are all here on a computer this Tech Tuesday, we actually have the opportunity to have everyone participate and start logging in and creating their very first notebook if they haven't done so already. So that's going to come towards the end. There's always an opportunity for questions and answers as well. So don't be afraid to type in your messages. Michele is going to keep an eye on the chat box there and interrupt me if needed with anything that comes up. So without further ado, I will move to our first and most important slide. And if you have to leave early, or you only have capacity to take in one slide's worth of information, make it this one. This contains the most important things that you will need to know about using LabArchives here at Weill Cornell. The first thing to remember is that the LabArchives accounts are free for all staff, faculty, postdocs, and students at Weill Cornell. You can log on through mynotebook.labarchives.com or just labarchives.com, and you will sign in using your Weill Cornell credentials, your seaweed and password. And everyone can create notebooks there with a free enterprise account that we have set up for everyone. LabArchives works on all platforms, so it doesn't matter if you have a Mac or a PC. You can even access LabArchives through your smartphone, which is particularly helpful if you're taking photographs of gels or your experimental results that can then be uploaded directly into the app. Now, all the data that you're entering and uploading into LabArchives is pushed up into the cloud where it is backed up. It makes it accessible from any device that you happen to be on. And it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're on the Weill Cornell network or somewhere remote. All the data and files are searchable within LabArchives, and everything is backed up on and hosted on a number of redundant LabArchives servers, making it accessible 24/7, and also meaning you don't have to worry about the having independent backup systems that you maintain. As far as data management, we also want to point out that it's very important to assign the notebooks to either the PI, the lab head, or a lab manager to be the owner and have responsibility and longevity for maintaining the notebooks. And you can store PHI in LabArchives notebooks at Weill Cornell, but be careful who you share your notebooks with. And we'll go over all of these things in more detail in the following slides. Now, there are three particular motivations for using electronic lab notebooks that work towards better scientific reproducibility, and why we should care about this in general. The first is the so-called reproducibility crisis. And the image that you can see on this screen here was taken from a survey that was done a little while ago now by Nature, and they asked researchers from many different fields if they felt there was truly a reproducibility crisis, and you can see the results here. Whether or not people felt that it was a significant crisis or not, there were only 10% of people surveyed that thought it either wasn't a problem or they weren't sure. And so this does at least indicate that we should be paying attention to how we can further research reproducibility and research integrity in our own practices, in our own labs. And so electronic lab notebooks are one piece of how we can work towards that. A second piece of the puzzle here, another motivating factor, is the increase in data retention mandates that are coming through, particularly from funding bodies. And so we see more and more now that groups like NSF or NIH have more strict requirements for the long-term retention of data that is used for research that has been funded by that body. And so this means that it is becoming more important just from a compliance perspective to be able to have a secure long-term storage solution for the work that you are doing. And to know that in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, you're going to be able to go back and access the research that you did in association with a particular set of funding or in association with a particular publication that you have put out. And the third and final motivator is more on the negative side here, but we are seeing generally an increase in the number of allegations made against researchers as far as academic misconduct. Now, this doesn't mean that misconduct itself is necessarily increasing. Many of these are simply troll attacks on researchers trying to tarnish reputations. But we also do know that there are always a few bad actors out there, and even with the high pressure for having scientific results published as rapidly as possible, people can sometimes be motivated to cut corners or do things inefficiently or inappropriately. And we want to be able to have a full record of the research process on hand, so that we can provide proof to others and assurance to ourselves that the work that we are doing is above board and has been appropriately managed and handled. And so these three particular issues, the reproducibility crisis, data retention mandates, and increases in misconduct allegations, all point towards a need to have robust processes in place for the way that we perform research here at Weill Cornell. And as I mentioned, LabArchives as an electronic lab notebook is one piece of the solution towards better scientific reproducibility. And so this is why we should care. And the LabArchives notebooks themselves have a number of features that will help address some of these particular issues, as well as making your research more accessible and more usable to you. And so the first thing is to note that every entry within your lab notebooks will have an indelible timestamp, enabling you to know the author of every entry into the notebook and the date and the time at which that entry or that revision was made. And that'll allow you to follow up with the right person in the lab for help or clarification if something within that notebook is not clear. And of course, it also forms a robust paper trail of sorts for your experimental work, helping you and others to trust the results of that particular experiment. Now, LabArchives also provides a way for you to organize and search all your data in a single place. So all versions of all your files can be securely stored and easily searched by a wide variety of different criteria, all within a single notebook or in a set of notebooks. You can quickly view older versions of a file, and even bring up a change log to see what has been changed from one version to another, and who it was that made that particular modification. You're also able to use an activity feed to see what recent updates have been made to any particular notebook. So you can track the progress of the research. And because all of the data are being stored in the cloud, they are accessible from anywhere. And because they're backed up, you won't have to manage separate backups within the lab. It's all taken care of for you by LabArchives. Now, you also have the ability to control the access permissions for your notebooks. And so you can share entire notebooks with other collaborators or just key pages within a notebook. And there are four main user types that can be assigned to collaborators of your notebook, which come with different rights and permissions available to them. So the first is the notebook owner. There's only ever one owner of a notebook, and this person has the ability to edit the notebook, to clone it, and even delete the entire notebook. The owner also has the ability to control who has access to the pages of that notebook. And we strongly recommend that within a lab, either the principal investigator for a project or a key lab manager is assigned the role of notebook owner for each notebook that your lab will produce. Now, this also means that if you're not the PI or lab manager, you can be assigned another role that still gives you the ability to edit and access the notebook. But if you end up moving labs, then the content of that notebook still is available to the lab for whom it is relevant and necessary for them to maintain access. Now, if you are the person who is moving away from the lab, it is also possible for the notebook to be shared with you, even if you leave the institution. So by assigning the ownership to the the lab manager or to the PI, that doesn't mean that you will necessarily have to lose access to the notebook, even if you move institutions. But it means that the PI is able to maintain constant access to all the documentation of the research that is happening within the lab. Now, the second role that can be created, and this I should explain, this is actually a screenshot from the notebook showing you how to set up your sharing. So it enables you to add as many users as you wish. And once you have created a new user, you then get the ability to assign which role that person will have within the notebook. And so as you can see here, I'm the owner of this particular notebook. And as owner, I've added Michele as a collaborator. And now I have the ability to assign either the administrator, user, or guest roles to Michele. And so the administrator role has the same rights as the owner, so that they can edit. They can also invite other collaborators to share and view and access the notebook. The only things that they can't do are clone the notebook or delete the notebook. Only the owner has the ability to do that. So the administrator rights can be good to be assigned to someone, particularly if they are the primary contributor to the notebook. So that might be a postdoc within the lab who has created the notebook and is putting in most of the data and most of the entries there, but isn't the PI, and so they can be the administrator and still be able to invite other people in to be able to edit the notebook without having to be the owner themselves. A user role as well can be given specifically edit or view only rights. Users can't share notebooks with other people. So it's once you have given someone a user access, they're not going to be able to then share that on with others. It stops with them, but they can be given the right to still edit the notebook if you wish, or just have a read-only access to that notebook. And then finally, the last role is the guest role. And this is a way to give someone edit rights for just 60 days. And so if you have someone who is temporarily into the lab for a short period of time, you want to give them user rights, but you don't want that access to continue indefinitely, you can invite them in as a guest. And then after 60 days, their access to that notebook will automatically expire. Now, of course, you can always remove a user once you've added them to a notebook yourself manually, if the need arises to change their access. That can always be done by the owner or administrator of a notebook. You don't have to set it with the automated settings of the guest. But this is just a convenient way that helps you to not have to explicitly track their access to the notebook quite so intensely. Now, a question that some of you will no doubt be asking is LabArchives approved for use with PHI? And the answer is yes. We have the BAA agreement in place. So it has been approved within Weill Cornell for storage of PHI in your notebooks, but you still have to be careful with how you are handling the data within the notebooks, just as you would have to be careful with how you're using transfer.weil or Box or any of our other storage solutions and services that you use on a daily basis at Weill Cornell. So in that sense, everyone is still responsible for where and how they access their notebooks. You're still not allowed to share your institutional password with anyone else. You shouldn't be making screenshots of the notebook and then sharing those inappropriately. And of course, notebook owners and administrators also have a responsibility to be careful when they are inviting someone in as a collaborator on a notebook, as a user or a guest, that they're not sharing content within the notebook that contains PHI with anyone who is not explicitly listed on the Institutional Review Board governance documentation or any other appropriate data use agreements that are in place for the PHI that is contained within the notebook. So due caution is always required, but it is approved for use as a storage location for PHI if that is part of the research that you are doing within the notebook. Now, intellectual property can also be stored within LabArchives, as long as, again, you take the appropriate precautions to protect the data and who it is shared with, just as you would with any other Weill Cornell supported tool. And if you have particular questions about IP, I definitely would recommend specific conversations with our Center for Technology Licensing group, and they'll be able to help answer particular questions that you may have about your specific project. Now, LabArchives notebooks also integrate with a number of different applications which allow you to do your work on your desktop or your laptop and have the results of that analysis or that Word document or PowerPoint presentation you're working on automatically uploaded and saved into your LabArchives notebooks. And so this is a great way for you to continue to keep all the results and all your analyses in one location. And so some of the more popular applications are listed here on this particular slide. There are others as well. You can look at the LabArchives website to get the full list of applications. One thing I will say for anyone who is a Jupyter Notebook user out there is that the current integration with LabArchives is the Notebook Viewer integration, which is to say you can upload a Jupyter IPy notebook file into LabArchives, and the notebook will be able to render that notebook file so that you can view its contents from within LabArchives. But it doesn't allow you to edit the file within LabArchives. It still requires you to host the Jupyter Notebook on your own server or on your own computer, and then submit the updated files back into the notebook to save it. They are working on having a more full integration so that it works more like the Microsoft applications or the Google Docs as well. But for now, you still have to do that work offline and then upload the results into the notebook as you would any other non-supported application. And so with that, I'm going to pause briefly in case there are questions from the slides that have just gone. But if there aren't any, oh, we do have some questions. Wonderful. Okay. So is the general workflow for labs starting out for the PI lab manager to make one notebook and then make sub notebooks within that for each lab member who can then be added as administrators, or does the PI lab manager make new notebooks for every lab member separately? So there are several ways that this could be done, of course. Perhaps one of the easiest ways is actually for each individual in the lab, when they need to start a new notebook, is to go in themselves, create a new notebook, and then assign the ownership of that notebook to their PI or lab manager. Of course, it is possible for the PI to create a new notebook and then invite someone in as a collaborator, though that then creates a little bit more work for the PI. So it's easy enough for each member of the lab to be able to create their own books and then be responsible for assigning the ownership to the appropriate person in the lab. Are notebooks exportable as a PDF? For example, Michele, I'm going to actually defer to you on this one. My understanding is they are not.
Yeah, they're not directly exportable to PDF. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also part of the security of the notebooks. Yeah. So if you need to share access with someone who's not currently on, you'll need to invite them as a collaborator. You can give them read-only access, so they could be a user with read-only access, so they can't change anything in the notebook, but you can't download it into a different format and then email it to them, for example. The storage capacity is very large. I'm forgetting the exact size. Do you know, Michele?
Yeah, the total capacity is actually unlimited. Each individual file, the total capacity, the maximum individual file size is 250 megabytes. So what LabArchives suggests is to, if you have larger files, to store them in OneDrive, which was also provided for free by WCM, and you can have 5 terabytes there, and then put a link to the file in the LabArchive notebook. Or you can put also a link to the file share, that if you have a lab or departmental file share. And then the other question is, Peter, you saw the one about LaserGene and SnapGene?
I have not seen that one yet.
So it says, is WCM planning to get an institutional license for SnapGene?
That is a good question. We're not currently working on that, but I know it is a popular application, so every now and then, yeah, we sort of review which applications are most have the greatest need that we can then support. But that one is definitely on our radar.
Yeah. So remember that at Software Hub, one word, .wild.cornell.edu is where all the scientific software is, and there you can make suggestions for new software. So Peter and the library constantly monitors the suggestions. So if a large number of people start requiring SnapGenes, then we will explore possibility. At the moment, we haven't seen that much request, and most people are happy with the LaserGene. But as any other software, depending on demand, the ITS and the library will definitely consider getting a site license.
Yeah.
Sandra De Maria has a question about when we leave the lab and our WCM ID is no longer active, how will we maintain access to the files? So the PI, that's why that is typical scenario when, that's why we suggest for the PI to just lab the notebook to be assigned to the PI, because there is quite a high turnover between student, postdocs, and techs. There is a lower turnover for PI. But then if a PI leaves, then we can make arrangement and have extend maybe an affiliate appointment or something like that to allow the PI access to the notebooks.
Well, and another thing that can be done too within that capacity, anyone can create a LabArchives account. So you can use a private email even, and you'll get a limit. You're not going to come in under our institutional license at that point. You'll have limited ability to create new notebooks. But with your own private account, that can then be used by the owner of a notebook to be able to then share access back to that notebook to that person, even once their seaweed has expired. So it's not necessary to maintain a Weill Cornell email address or seaweed active in order to continue to have access to a lab notebook. It can be arranged through a private LabArchives account, or if they move to another institution who has LabArchives, it can be shared with the user's LabArchives account from that institution.
That's very useful for example, for students or postdoc that leave the institution because they get a job somewhere else, but still need to finish a project, they need to write a paper, they still need access to their data. So that's very easy for the PI to give access to people that have left the institution to the data so that they can continue to finish their work.
Yeah. Lots of questions here.
I was going to say, Peter, I know that you wanted to demonstrate a couple things in LabArchives. If you'd like, I can pull all these questions to answer after the session in the event that you can't get to them all.
Okay, that might be a wise thing to do. Quickly trying to scan for some particularly pertinent ones that we can answer there. I see one about compatibility with OneNote, and I know other people have asked this question as well. There's not currently an integrated OneNote ability for you to have open up your OneNote files that are stored within LabArchives. So it is transferring information from OneNote into LabArchives. Can be tedious if you've got some very large notebooks there. They do recommend that their advice from LabArchives has been to export the OneNote content and then upload those into LabArchives. It's not ideal, and hopefully they will eventually have a OneNote integration as they do for Word and Excel and PowerPoint. But at this point, if you have your content in OneNote, you will have to do some sort of export and upload to get that into LabArchives if you're transferring it.
Yeah, John Wagner is asking, since the PI is responsible for the research, under what circumstances would they not be the owner? Yeah, so that's our suggestion. The PI should be the owner. Now, if you have a massive lab with 20, 40, 30, 40 people in the lab, but you have a cadre of lab manager, then in some limited circumstances might be appropriate to have the lab manager be the owner. But the primary suggestion that IDS gives is that the PI should be the owner of the notebooks, and the PI does not have to create individually all the notebooks. The students, the researchers, the postdocs, the technicians can create their own notebook by themselves because everybody's access, and then simply assign the ownership to the PI, and then the user that created another notebook can do everything with it. But the ownership should be transferred to the PI.
Yeah.
And then Kate asks, since Box is no longer going to be supported at Cornell, is there a way to create all the archived records in LabArchives to keep everything together? So Box is not clear exactly what's going to happen, but remember that there is OneDrive. So if you're worried about Box going away, the best thing is to put everything in OneDrive, which has also free, has 5 terabytes of space. It's not going to go anywhere, OneDrive, because it's part of the O365 account.
You could also, upload files if they're less than 250 megabytes. You could upload them directly into the notebook.
OneDrive, and then just put the link in. And Carrie asks, the next thing she asks is, does not OneDrive require collaborators to have a CV? No. There is already a long list of institutions. A lot of, of course, the Sloan Kettering, Rockefeller, NYP, HSS, Columbia, those are already preset, but there is a very long list of institutions which have access to our OneDrive. And you can just ask ITS, there is a form that you can fill to ask ITS, I have these collaborators at UCSF or UC San Diego or Harvard or whatever, and you can ITS connects with the other institution, and then you can share it with another institution, either another company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. With 10 minutes left, I'm keen to still actually get everyone's hands dirty, so to speak, to actually start creating the notebook. I'll go through the questions again carefully afterwards in case we've missed any, and make sure we do answer them. And I'll have Vanessa can email out the answers as part of the follow-up. But what we have here basically on the screen is a set of very simple instructions that this is all it's going to take for you to walk through in terms of creating your very first notebook. So by way of being able to track how everyone's going, I'd encourage you, if you want to participate in this, to raise your hand, as Vanessa was saying, using the icon at the bottom of your Zoom bar there, and that way we know that you are actively attempting to get through all of this, and we'll sort of step through everything, each of these 3 steps. And when you've successfully completed each step, I'll ask you to actually put your hand down. Then we know that you've successfully done it. And anyone whose hand is still up means that you're either still going or you're having some trouble, and we'll be able to track how the whole group is going. So I see a few hands going up here, which is great. So if you want, open up a browser on your computer, and again, you can sign in either through mynotebook.labarchives.com, which is written up here in the screen, or you can just go to labarchives.com and then select the sign in button in the top right of the screen. And that will then bring up this.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michele?
No, go on.
Okay, right. So that will then bring up this sign in box. Don't enter in your email address up in the top, but instead on this drop down list here, if you click on this, it will bring up a long list of institutions alphabetically sorted. So scroll right to the bottom, and then Weill Cornell is down near the bottom of the list. Select that, and it should take you automatically into our single sign-on page, where it will ask you for your seaweed and your institutional password. And if you enter those things, it should take you to the LabArchives page.
Vanessa, do you want to mute Maureen? She was the first one to raise her hand. If you have a question, she wants to share a screen.
Right. So
I've let her unmute if she has a question.
Yeah. And so everyone who's got their hands up is presumably actively trying to log in, which is great. And if you're able to successfully log in and see the page, and I'll just quickly bring in to view what it will look like. You'll get this sort of login. You'll see the LabArchives with Weill Cornell medicine listed underneath, and it will bring you into your first notebook is actually automatically generated for you there. And so if you've been able to log in and see that page, then lower your hand, and then we'll know that you've been able to get there successfully.
And if anybody's having issues logging in, you can type it in the chat as well so that we can identify you.
Right. So the question, sorry, go Michele.
No, you see the last question. So there are 2 questions. One from Guillermo Cordonas. My lab has many old lab notebooks. Is it possible to give this to the library and later on have everything on LabArchives? Yes. So we are evaluating the need and how many people want to scan all notebooks and see. So if you send, you saw the Peter put an email at the beginning. Peter, you want to go to the first page and show so scisoft@med.cornell.edu. You can send an email there and say that you would like to have all notebooks scanned, how much how many notebooks, how many pages, if they're binders and things like that. And can we share this page and potential folder with outside user? Yes, you can share it with anybody who has a basic notebook account is free. So you can share it with somebody with a free account, and you can share pages and folders with them. Yeah. One thing you have to keep in mind is that, as Peter said, if you store PHI and IP in those particular pages, then sharing it with people outside has consequences. So make sure that you know exactly, maybe check with your PI if it's okay to share it with people. But yes, you can attach it, you can share it with as many people you want. The default sharing lasts 6 months. After 6 months, Lab Notebook asks you if you want to renew it, just to make sure that you don't share somebody with somebody and then you just forget it and they have access forever. There are few people that still have their hands up, so maybe they're having problems.
Yeah, maybe.
It seemed like there was one from Derek about, we're getting a question about having an existing LabArchives account already. I know that Derek is participating in the logging in exercise.
Oh, wonderful. So if you have external, if you already have an account with another institution, they will not be linked in any way. At least initially. I'm not sure if there's a way to make them linked. I doubt it. So what you would need to do
you can
is
share
become
it
a
with
collaborator of yourself.
Yeah, share it with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So just add the email of the other institution as a collaborator on your Weill Cornell notebooks, and then that will provide you access, or vice versa. And then you'll be able to see the notebooks in your other account.
If Sandra De Maria says, I'm switched to a huge domain site and has to choose a payment plan. So make sure that you go in my note, look at the page, look at what Peter is showing now. So make sure that you go to my notebook, like harvest.com, and then you select, you click, don't put your Cornell email there. Go to below, click on the down pointing triangle and choose Weill Cornell Medicine. So there is where you would choose Weill Cornell, and then it should automatically bring you to the usual SSO. So don't put your email where it says sign in. Put Weill Cornell in the pop-up menu. Peter asking about, can you briefly talk about the lab inventory feature? Yeah, at the moment, so the LabArchive contract that we have is connected with the Ithaca, the main Cornell LabArchive contacts, and the inventory is not part of it. Again, we send an email to SciSoft, and then basically, depending how many people request it, we're going to evaluate the cost benefit analysis and see if to add it. We don't know what the request there is, because other people really use other lab inventory features and things like that.
Right.
How do I make my PI the owner? So
yep, I can walk through this one, Michele.
Yeah.
So I have my notebook here. And what I've done is I've gone to the top drop-down item and selected notebook settings. And then that takes you to all the settings for your notebook. You want to select user management. And this is where you can add new users and also change the role of any user. Now, you've no doubt come in and realized, oh, wait, I can't select owner from this list here. So what you need to do is two things. First, you need to have someone else already assigned a role within the notebook in order to transfer ownership to them. And then once you have done that, you'll see on the far right next to your name as the current owner, you can click on this ownership transfer button. And what that's going to do is bring up a drop-down box that lets you select from all the other current collaborators on that notebook. And then if you select transfer ownership, that will then make that person the new owner of the notebook.
Yeah. So basically, first you add a new user, clicking on the top right, put the email of the PI, and then you transfer. Vanessa, do you want to mute Derek? Sure, because he's asked the question again. But from the writing, I'm not sure. He's talking about any other account. I'm not sure what his question is. Maybe Derek, if you want to talk, if you want to unmute yourself, then put the question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm just saying, when I went to the link, I did the institutional login, I did the two-factor, and now I'm hitting this page where it says at the top, Weill Cornell Medicine login setup, and I'm given two options. I have an existing LabArchives account already, or I do not have a LabArchives account and need to create one. And I wasn't sure whether this was referring to a personal account or one that's like related to Weill Cornell, which option I should choose.
Can you show your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Vanessa may need to assign the permissions first. But,
as a co-host, he's a co-host. So Derek, you should
wonderful.
see a share screen button at the bottom. Let me know if you can.
Yes. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the page I got.
Yes, click where it says, I do not have a LabArchive.
Okay.
If you never created one with Cornell, create a new account, yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I didn't like do something weird. I was like trying to create a new account when you guys obviously have an institutional account.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so then it should show you the page.
Perfect. Okay, I think
There
I'm
you
good.
go. Wonderful.
What are
Great.
the advantages? Do you see, Peter, do you see the question between Evernote?
Yeah. I saw that one come up. I wanted to say we are at our official time for Tech Tuesday. I can certainly stay on and answer questions, but also we'll make a note to answer all these other questions that are coming in now, so that everyone gets their questions answered. And so Vanessa, I don't know if you have a wrap up.
Well, I was going to say, I know that some people, I've seen some people drop off because I know it is the official end time. What I would suggest actually is I have all of the chat recorded since I'm recording this session, and I know that more questions will probably come in as you're answering questions. So just to, I don't know what everyone's schedule is, and I just want to respect that. I will take all of the questions that people have put in the chat. I will send them to Peter and Michele so that they can answer anything that we haven't gotten to today. And I will include the answers as part of the follow-up email with the helpful links to about LabArchives and the video recording, just so everybody has a copy of it. And if you have more questions, you can just reach out via email to us. So I think that would be the plan of action.
Okay.
But I just want to say we had a lot of participation today. Thank you all so much for coming to this session. Thank you to Peter and Michele for hosting this and answering all of these questions and showing us more about LabArchives. We really appreciate everyone's participation in this. And I will be reaching out to everybody who's registered, hopefully later on today, if not tomorrow morning, just to make sure I get all these questions answered. And without further ado, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Yeah, and Vanessa, make sure in the email you have the scisoft@med.cornell.edu to answer questions.
Yep, I'll put everything.
Thanks everybody. And again, feel free to email us at scisoft@med.cornell.edu, or even personally if you want, if you have any questions. And if you are a PI and you have a lab and you want to have an introductory session to your whole lab, you can just email me and we'll try to organize something for your own lab, so everybody in the lab can see this.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
Vanessa.
everybody. Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Peter.